Hello and welcome to Kinboshi Sumo, where we are halfway through the January Basho, and I got some stuff to talk about, primarily all of which have to do with Yokozunas. So the biggest news is, of course, that we are now down one Yokozuna, as Terunofuji has officially retired after having to pull out of the tournament, and, sadly, not looking like the Teru of 2021 that we all remember. But also, we lost a potential Yokozuna as Kotozakura absolutely imploded with 5 straight losses after his opening day win in this tournament. And then, out of nowhere, to open that first week, Oho looked like an absolute dominant monster. Looked like he was going to start trying to make his own Yokozuna campaign. Obviously, not really, but, we're just trying to hyperbolize here. But here's what's interesting to me. So I put up a little poll and asked people what the most surprising take for them on the start of this tournament was. And by far, the Kotozakura falling apart angle was what they picked, but Oho was a strong second place. And this is really interesting to me because these are both the grandsons of Yokozunas. These guys are about the same age, and their grandparents were about the same age. They were more or less contemporaries to each other. And actually, Oho and Kotozakura both went to high school together for at least some time at Saitama Sakai, which is this very prestigious sumo high school, and there they also had teammates Gonoyama and Kotoshoho, so this place churns out stars. But this has got me wondering, first of all, so, the sky is falling, Kotozakura is falling apart, it's not, and I think a lot of us, judging from the comments on that poll, know that it's not. We're all very shocked that this has happened, but no one thinks that his career is over. And if we look at his grandfather, he's actually following a somewhat similar course. His grandfather took around 4 years to even get into the top ranks, similar to what he did. And then once his grandfather got there, he didn't win his first tournament until, let me check notes. Okay, so he wins his first Yugioh 10 years into his career. So in that case, Kotozakura is definitely ahead of him, having won his first Yugioh last year. So that's very similar how close their careers have been in the beginning. And then Kotozakura the first actually went for 5 years, I think, at Ozeki. Actually, more than that. There were a couple more tournaments, but 5 full years plus before he actually got to Yokozuna. So he spent a lot of time at Ozeki. So the reason I say that is, while this particular performance is shocking from Kotozakura, as far as his career, I don't think there's anything to worry about. If we look at his grandfather, his own grandfather as the parallel, there's plenty of time. He could still follow the same path. He could still win 5 Yugioh throughout his career. And that's great, right? That's incredibly impressive. Oho, on the other hand, is not at all close to what his grandfather did. His grandfather took 3 years to get into the top division, was runner-up in his very first ever tournament, and then by the end of his first year had won his first Yugioh and went on to win, obviously, what at the time and until Hakuho was the record for the most Yugioh of any Rikishi. But this all has me thinking, even though for this tournament, I don't think it matters. Personally, I'm very impressed and heartened by what I'm seeing from Oho, but I don't think he's going to win this thing. I would actually still put my money on a couple of the one-loss guys, either Hoshoryu or Terunofuji as my picks at this point, seeing a week of competition. But I'm interested just to hear what you guys think. What defines greatness in sumo today, and are we seeing a recession to the mean? I don't think that just because we're not watching a Hakuho or because we're not watching a Taiho that we're not seeing great sumo right now. And I'm curious if some of the stuff, we hear stories out of Arashio Beya that they're doing all these really exciting modern things, but when I listen to some of the stuff, they're we sit there with iPads and we record our practice matches and break them down so that we can go back and address it. I'm that's stuff the NBA was doing 20 years ago as far as American sports, So some of the tradition in sumo could potentially be holding that back, or we could say that they are catching up and getting into this revolution, which is seeing why we have such parity in the sport today and why you don't have these dominant outliers like Taiho, like Oho's grandfather, right? So based on what you've seen out of these two guys, like I said, we've got the 2 sharks in the water chasing them, only 1 loss behind them. But in context of Terunofuji just leaving, and the fact that Terunofuji got 10, so he, in my opinion, that puts him up in the pantheon. Getting those double-digit Yugiohs is awesome. But seeing everything he had to go through, how long his career, what it took to get him to 10, and then knowing what we know about the Rikishi we have right now. Again, still, by all means, young, plenty of career left, plenty of time, but no one's doing what Taiho did. No one's doing what Hakuho did. I'm curious, what would make a new modern definition of dominance in sumo? What are we actually expecting to see? And how can we recalibrate to sort of allow ourselves to give some grace to guys like Kotozakura when they have these expectations and fall short very quickly and very abruptly, keeping in mind that there are always room for these surprises like Oho shooting up out of nowhere, or last year Terunofuji taking his first Yugioh, beating a 100+ year record. So, I don't know. Those are the big storylines for me. If I missed something, tell me, what are you thinking the big storylines are from this tournament? What's interesting you? But also, as Terunofuji steps away, as we lose a potential Yokozuna contender, still having one, Hoshoryu is still in the mix, what do you think dominance looks like in modern sumo going forward? Either way, thanks for watching. Can't wait for the rest of the Basho because it's been awesome. Talk to y'all soon.